As a 10-year-old, they're going through the things that you would do as a young 20-year-old, right? And we're able to strategically create those obstacles and challenges for them to knock down those barriers, right? And I think I'm really trying to take that compound interest effect, and specifically finance speaking, right? Like they have already bought their first rental property. That is massive wealth building starting at such that young age, but also not only the passive income there, but the confidence to do so many big things. Welcome back to The Donkey
and The Bee,
where men are jackasses
and women are biatches,
where we work together to build an extraordinary life.
Tune in to up your game in your marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances. Welcome back to the episode of The Donkey and the Bee with your hosts, Brett and Laura Shotkavis, where we talk all things marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances, all of our successes, failures, and everything in between. Today, we are talking about teaching your kids to do hard things.
That's right. So we personally are very growth-minded, and we are always trying to find our limits, the boundaries of what we can do, and then push that a little further. So we're taking those same lessons and applying it to our children. Even at young ages, I want them to push their boundaries, to hit their breaking point, right? When they're little younger kids, to that crying point. Mm-hmm. And as they get older, it's that like, oh my gosh, Dad, that was the hardest thing I've ever done point. And I think that is really growth oriented, right? Like if we are striving for it, there's so many of us as entrepreneurs, as business people that are striving to like, let's be the best we can. And why don't we just take this and turn it and say, okay, why are we not teaching our kids this, right? Why are we not teaching these excellence in sports or in business or in Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or whatever it is? How do you take these principles that we are growing ourselves in and say, okay, let's show the same things to our children?
A lot of times parents save their children or protect their children from certain circumstances in which they can grow because they think that that's going to help them. It's like that helicopter parent, right? That you see on the playground, the kid falls and the parent runs to him and makes sure they're okay, right? I think it's important to let your kids fall and get up on their own. And I think that I had to learn this, especially being a first-time parent when you have your only child. You want the best for them and you don't want them to go through the things you went through as a kid and like you're trying to create that environment for them. But I think a lot of times we create that environment that's honestly detrimental to their growth. And so I think it's important to take inventory on yourself. And if you are creating that environment that's maybe enabling your child to be too comfortable, because I think that I do see a lot of parents out there and they have the best intention in their heart and mind, right? Like they're doing it for the best for their children. But I think in actuality, it's detrimental to the child.
So as far as teaching your kids growth and excellence, I go back and I think about like Tiger Woods. You hear these, story of his parents giving him, a golf club in his hand at 3 years old and literally started his journey then. Or you think of like Shaun White, and I listened to some podcasts with him, and he's talking about, right, when he was little, he had a much older sibling that he was competing against the older kids. And then by the time he was a teenager, he was fully competing against adults, right? This is when you start young and you compete against people who are adults or so much older than you. They're not in your same age group, right? We're not talking about like your T-ball kid against other T-ball kids. Like that's not what I'm kind of get here with pushing yourself and doing hard things, right? That's just doing normal things. This is what I had been thinking about with our daughters, like kind of their whole life as they were very little is, what opportunity do they have? I have this opportunity as a father as I'm growing and pursuing greatness in certain things that I'm interested in, how can I show them and give them a strategic advantage by literally starting them 20 years or 10 years earlier than other things, right? And I think we've done a phenomenal job with that. And I want to unpack that today because really we are business people. We are good at business and we encouraged them and taught them these systems and structure and how to start a business. They were 4 and 6, started their first lemonade stand, right? And I kind of think of that as very similar to, Tiger Woods' dad giving him that golf club at 3 years old and really getting him started in that journey. Because business is not something you ever stop, right? Like whether they decide not to be entrepreneurs or not, they're still competing in the marketplace, right? They're still implying or implementing these lessons that they had. So I want to kind of go there and talk about how, as a parent, you can use your skill sets that you know about, where you're pushing yourself, and then say, hey, you know, son, daughter, here, let me give you this leg up. Let me show you 10, 20 years earlier and give you that compound interest, you know, a really effect that no one else is learning yet or no one else is implementing yet, and kind of give you the head start.
I don't want this to necessarily be specific toward business. I think it could be, like Brett said, toward anything, toward acting or baking or whatever it is, communication with other people. It could be anything that you are specifically good at and that you're teaching your kids those same strategies, I would say. And I think it's mostly getting your kids uncomfortable and getting your kids comfortable with failure. I think that's really what we're talking about, because on the road to success is a ton of failures. And so I think having them not be scared to maybe go try out for something and not make it, or maybe you're the lead role in a play and you stumble on your words in the play, or whatever it be, right? Just get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think that's really kind of the backbone of what we're talking about here is we've put our kids in situations where they're learning so much, and we've kind of like, I don't want to say push them out of the nest, but like gotten them to the edge of like, hey, do it on your own here. And it's okay if you fail, because those are the lessons you're going to take with you when you jump out of the nest and into the real world.
Yeah, but I would say more than that, it's them actually in the real world as kids, right? They are not competing against other kids their age. They're not even competing against teenagers. Mm-hmm. They're competing against adults. And so, as I was kind of alluding to, right, they started a lemonade business at little baby size, and then just a little bit older than little baby size started a jewelry business. And now they've been 5 years into it, and they're very successful in that, and they do a lot of events. And they travel around Texas. We haven't gotten anywhere out of state. So they travel all around Texas, and we do these multi-day events where they are running it entirely themselves. It's 100% their business. They are actually doing it. And it's not kids' events. They are not competing against other young people. They are competing against adults, where this is, as adults, this is their sole source of income, right? Like this is how adults feed themselves. They go and they sell things and events around the country, weekend events and 3-4 day events, big festivals where there's tens of thousands of people and they have to, really professional kind of stuff going on. So our girls kind of baby steps at a time, right? Like we showed them and we kind of carried them those first year, 2 years or so, and then step by step released the responsibility as they were physically and mentally able to do it. But what that means is they are pushing their limits. They are always competing against people who are literally 20, 30, 40 years older than them with that much more experience. And I can tell you for certain that your kids are able to do it. They are physically and mentally able to compete against adults. And a lot of times they will beat adults. Our girls beat adults so often in business-wise because they have a strategic advantage that they stand out. There is a marketing advantage there, right? Yeah. Like they have signs that says support kid entrepreneur, like right on their booth. And then they walk up and there's no parents there, right? It's literally our girls. They make the earrings, they order them, they run the marketing, they do all of that kind of stuff. And honestly, I think they're better than most of the other vendors and booths. And I think that's because of us, right? We are business people. We know these lessons, these systems, and we're able to show them that, where a lot of other people who are vendors are not professional business people. They are kind of hobbyists that didn't want to get a real job. So they kind of struggle and do that kind of stuff, right? They're not professionals. So a lot of times they are out businessing, right? A lot of these other adults that are there, and they have this strategic advantage of they look like nobody else. There are a bunch of old people running all the other booths around them, and then you have these two little girls who, when they started a couple years ago, their heads were barely higher than the booth, and they run the whole dang thing, right? And so I would encourage you as a parent to find something that you are good at. We're good at business. I can show them that, right? But you may be great at cooking, right? So let's not put them in kids competitions, maybe older kids competitions, into adult competition. Push their limits and their boundaries. They will fail so much, but as they continue to get better and better, the confidence the ability to compound interest that over, their teen years into their 20 years as people are going into college and still not hitting real life challenges and solutions. They've been doing that for 15 or 20 years by that point. And this is kind of that Tiger Woods effect. You gave them those obstacles at such a young age that they now think that normal obstacles are like, oh yeah, that's nothing, right? Like, I'm ready for massive challenges. I want my girls to potentially be huge at whatever they do, if it's business or whatever it is, right? We are entrepreneurs. We're teaching them these things, but I don't expect by the time they're in college or out of college that they will be in that normal like 20s stage of life. That's what they're going through now. As a 10-year-old, they're going through the things that you would do as a young 20-year-old, right? And we're able to strategically create those obstacles and challenges for them to knock down those barriers, right? And I think I'm really trying to take that compound interest effect, and specifically finance speaking, right? Like, I've already bought their first rental property. Our youngest bought it at 9 years old. Like, think of the compound interest just on that one deal, but she'll buy another property this year or maybe beginning of next year, and then, keep going from there, right? Like, that is massive wealth building starting at such that young age, but also not only the passive income there, but the confidence to do so many big things.
So I guess the question to ask yourself is, what strategic advantage can you give to your child, right? And I think that comes with confidence in yourself, knowing what you're good at. So if I were to say, I think I'm really good at communication with other people. I love relationship building. I love talking to people. I can strike up a conversation with anybody. And so I think that's my strategic advantage for myself. And then Brett is the business. And I think that actually is kind of a crazy dynamic duo when you put those two together. Someone who can, build a relationship, strike up conversations, and then also build like a massive successful business is like, that's a great combination. And so I think if you're married, if you have a spouse and you have kids, think of that one thing that you have and that one thing that your spouse has, and how can you combine those together to teach your kids those strategic advantages in those certain areas to create this like crazy force of a child, right? And so take inventory on that. What do you excel in your life? And it does not have to be business. It doesn't have to be these certain things we're talking about. It could be something completely different, but teach those things to your kids. Like, you have that advantage. You've learned all those lessons throughout your life. Like, now teach your kids. It doesn't matter if they're 4, like, they're still going to absorb like a sponge all the things that you were showing them and teaching them, even at 4 years old. So even if you think they're not going to be intaking it, they're watching the butterflies fly by or something out in the backyard, and they probably will be, but they're still going to sponge it in. So still take that time to instill those things within your children.
I would say if you're great at technology, that is the thing where you should focus on right now. If you can do coding, programming, if you're great at filming or social media stuff, man, your kids will pick that stuff up. I mean, that's 20 plus years of experience. They could be like a master influencer by the time they get to like college, right? Like, there's so many different things, or physical things, right? Like, I like to do long races and triathlons and Ironman. And so I took my older daughter, and she did her first rookie triathlon with us last week. So we did it side by side and literally swam with her and rode with her, because I was worried she was going to drown. I didn't know yet in open water how she's going to do, because she's 12. Right. But we did not do a kid's triathlon. We actually had to lie about her age to get her into the teenager and adult triathlon, right? Because I want to push her boundaries. I want her to compete, not against people her age. That's not going to do her any good. That she's going to think she's either average or above average. That's not what we're talking about today. How do you get excellence? And it's competing against people who are 3 or 10 levels ahead of you. That's where you can take that mental perspective shift. And that's really what it is, right? Like, it's just confidence building. It's knowing that I can do these big, scary things. How do you push your child to do that? So as we're out on the run, she looked at me and says, Dad, like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And then we're talking about another race that's coming up next month. And she's like, you know what? This one's a little bit longer. I know I can do it, right? Like, it wasn't that physically difficult. It was just something that like kind of intimidated me. And so the mental barrier that she went through, most adults are scared to do a small triathlon, right? Like, you get a preteen out there and let them do this, and they're competing against other adults doing this big race. And now she has overcome that and she's ready for a bigger obstacle. Now, it's not really relevant to me that she follows in all the things that I'm good at, right? She's going to be good at her own things. But at least at this stage of life, with your kids, they want to sample all sorts of different things. And so I think it's important that you can allow them to sample some of the things that you can guide them in, whether it be business or sports or some of these other things, right? You have so many dads out there who are like, great athletes and other things like that. They may not be business people. Show them the excellence in these kind of things. Don't have them, compete against kids their age. Find opportunities to compete against older kids, or adults. To really, it's really about the mental confidence that they're going to achieve. All right, well, to wrap this thing up and really have some practical action items for you, I would ask and challenge you as a parent first. Like, are there areas of your life where you're actually pushing yourself? Because if you're not pushing yourself, if you are pretty average in some of these areas, you're not average your potential, right? Like, your potential has excellence in certain things. God made you special and unique, and there's 2 or 3 things that you have the potential to be amazing at. So identify those things and start challenging yourself to get amazing, get uncomfortable, challenge yourself and grow in these things, and then share those things with your children. Show them as an example. They are sponging up the whole world right now. It doesn't have to be their calling to do the same thing you do, but you know what? Let them participate in it. They want to sample all sorts of different things and let them see the principle of you pushing your limits, hitting your limits. Let them see you out on your first marathon on the side of the course they're throwing up. That is phenomenal for them to see, right? This is mom or dad pushing their limits. And then show them, this is how I did it. Now I want you to go push your limits. Let's find some things for you to try and let's compete competitively. Let's find your boundary here, right? And then you know what? You're going to hit it and you're going to fail. That is part of what we're talking about here. Success equals failure 99 times and then succeeding. So show that lesson to your children. So we're not expecting you to be a superhero parent here, but get out there and just show them, here's excellence. Here's how I'm pursuing excellence, and you do the same thing.
Well, thanks for joining us on another episode of The Donkey and the Bee. And we here on The Donkey and the Bee, we do not run ads. We think that that's super obnoxious. So we have just one ask for you. If you could just share this episode, share it with your parents, share it with your neighbors, share it with your siblings, coworkers, whomever you think would benefit from this message. And that would be just a huge win for us. Also, click subscribe below so you will be notified of any new content that we drop. And we will see you on the next one.